Hello, welcome to the Not Another Recruitment podcast, another podcast about recruitment. My name is James Goddard. I'm co-founder of the Talent Community and James Adams, because when I left my job in 2020, no one would employ me. I'm joined by three fantastic guests today, Daen Fox, Paul Sumner, and Virginia Tirado. Virginia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Virginia Tirado. I am also a talent leader who has followed the path of going on my own to start a business. And now I'm splitting my time between London and LA. And I happen to be in LA at the moment.
Well, thank you for joining us from LA. Paul, would you like to introduce yourself?
Far less glamorous in the sunny streets of Bourneville here. So I'm Paul Sumner, so I'm head of recruitment for Europe for National Express. 20 years nearly in the space now. I must be getting old. Half my time agency, half my time in-house. So hopefully bring a slightly different spin where I've kind of been poacher turned gamekeeper over the years and moved into where I'm at now. So that's me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. And Daen, last but not least, would you like to introduce yourself?
So I am Mr. Fox. Some call me Daen Fox. Some call me DJ Daen Fox. I've been in recruitment now for just over 11, 12 years. So many different types of industries. But interestingly about me, I'm a little bit broken. I'm neurodiverse. So I can't be anything but me. So I definitely add a different flavour to the world of TA. And we're all here for it.
Definitely. Well, thank you all for your time again. So I thought I'd just dive straight in with the first question. And it's actually based on something you mentioned, Virginia, when you responded to the LinkedIn post I put out asking for guests. And I thought it was really interesting. So you were talking about, Hung Lee said that around 36% of TA leaders were thinking about potentially leaving the industry after about 1,800 were surveyed. I thought I'd just open this question up to everyone, really. Why do we think that is? Because it's a big figure.
Yeah, and that doesn't include the people that when we're answering the survey said other, right? So, or some, I'm still thinking about it. These were people that were really considering leaving, right? So that number might be higher. I think that in my opinion, my humble opinion, we have seen, the world change in the last 5 years, and we've seen the ups and downs since COVID. I started a job 2 weeks before COVID as the head of talent, the director of talent for Zalando in Berlin. And it's just been such a roller coaster, right? And as we get into having more responsibilities and doing more things, you're looking for stability. And I think that our industry has just been a bit of a roller coaster. I think the direct consequence has been looking for a bit more certainty has caused us to reevaluate our career choices at the moment.
I've been tempted to leave TA altogether as well. I actually had a 6 months break and I went down the entertainment route, which was amazing. I love music so much. But then working long weekends, night shifts pretty much takes its toll. So the 9 to 5 is all right. I think TA has been undervalued recently and a lot of companies are paying a lot less than what they were. So the market's gone down. So much so to the extent where recruitment's now being given to other people in different roles like HR or even in some cases marketing. So we, as an industry, we really need to showcase what it is that we do in talent acquisition. It's not just filling jobs, it's so much more.
TA is always the first thing to go, isn't it? When budgets are tightened from a HR perspective, it's the easy win. And it makes our world a bit more volatile. A bit like Daen says there, I do think sometimes we're a bit to blame in that we don't make it really obvious the value we add. We're very almost humble as an industry and kind of a bit of a subsidiary, whereas your HR directors, your finance directors will go and bend the ear of the right person. I think sometimes in our industry we feel a bit inferior with that and don't dare have those conversations with the senior people who ultimately are going to keep us all in a job at the end of the day. To me, recruitment's the easiest place to show value in the world. So it's the first thing, but sometimes we talk about the softer stuff rather than actually what's a business interesting to start with is pounds and pence. So you get the pounds and pence and then you get the license to go and do the sexy stuff which we all enjoy. But I think sometimes we don't satisfy the pounds and pence side of a finance director or a CEO's name. So sometimes it's a bit of our fault as well within that.
I think there's some interesting questions being pulled out from this, which is how can we showcase TA more effectively in an organization. So Paul, I think you make some really good points about trying to look at the bottom line and get involved as business stakeholders. So showing that TA can contribute to revenue, can contribute to profitability. But how do TA get a seat at the table?
I always take two routes. So I think quite often we produce data. So TA is very data led. It always is and always has been. But it's data to satisfy ourselves, really. So we look at time to hire. We look at how many interviews they've got. It's all very just to please ourselves that our process is working well, but it doesn't really mean anything to a CEO. So two angles I always take are really effective workforce planning, where you educate, and I've done it in our businesses, you educate the business on how much it's costing them per day, per seat that's empty, because there's a price to that, there's a number attached to that, which then when you're looking for investment, it can be very directly correlated to the bottom line. And then on the flip side of that, then it's the value that those people, when they are brought in, add. And you've got your turnover rates, which affects revenue, is a well-known stat that everybody knows. I set targets a bit like agency-based almost, where I give my guys who are in the non-volume space a monetary target so that 15% of everything they fill, and let's see what number it gets to. I mean, the last 2 years it's been over £1 million, which has been, the first year was more than a budget. So when I'm going into a budget meeting and go, look, if you didn't have these two people, you've got £1 million hole, quickly sharpens the mind, doesn't it, before you start worrying about time to hire. They're more interested about £1 million than they are about, I've reduced time to hire from 30 to 20 or whatever. That just doesn't go in their head.
Virginia, what do you think?
I would add, I totally agree with Paul. I think I would add that sometimes we also fail to build the right partnerships within the other support functions, right? So to get that visibility, we don't always have that place at the table, but we don't actively go finding for allies that want to see the value we bring. If you start early on, aside from building partnerships with your hiring managers, which is obviously important, is building partnerships with other support functions, particularly if you're not reporting directly to the chief people officer, then you're sort of one layer removed and brought in quite late to discussions, whether it is that workforce planning, whether it's the financial, the fiscal plan or operating plan for the following year. And we're only seen as executors. So if you don't carve a place for yourself to be, heard in those conversations, obviously to add value, not to just talk about anything, but like what Paul is saying, if you are looking at that workforce planning and you're brought in really late and you don't have the capacity because you now need to hire 50 people more than you hired the last year, and you weren't part of the conversation, the frustrations start to build up, right? So I would say that it is key to use that data acumen that you have to show that, but to also show it to the right people and to build partnerships, right? I think that is a huge key to success, and we don't always do it. So I've always had this conversation with my team leads about making sure they're building the right partnerships early on.
I suppose we're talking about early on, which is a really natural conversation to have in a startup or a scale-up environment. So partnering with key decision makers or founders. How can you replicate that in an enterprise environment?
Exactly the same. I mean, I have actually always worked for enterprise, and I feel that it is about people at the end of the day. And that point that Daen is making is that, we hire people, and sometimes those people come into the organization and we just bring them in and drop in. Okay, I've made the hire, somebody else go figure out how they get onboarded. If they have an issue with their contract, that's not my issue. That's HR ops, whatever. And if you're not, again, focusing on the whole process and who are the people that come in, that whole process is not from the type the rec is open. If you are a TA leader, it's like, where is the business going? What are we trying to achieve? By when do we need to have those heads? Are we sure we need those heads? Have we seen what those attrition numbers are and how that might impact? And when you start asking the right questions, people say, oh, wow, I hadn't thought about this. Yes, no, I haven't seen the attrition numbers. I can't tell you what that attrition number is for last year. Yet, we're planning to bring 150 people, but we may have an attrition of 25% or 30, right? So I think it applies exactly the same way, James. I've been in the TA space for about a decade, I've been in business operations and legal before that for about another 2 decades. And I sometimes we forget that, our lives are not just this little bit of work we're doing, right? We are a whole person. And the same way you influence other relationships in your life, when you need to get something, those are the same techniques you need to use when you're in your professional environment.
Yeah, I think getting an exec sponsor gets you to the right table. You need to persuade one, really. Don't try and persuade them all at once, or get a slot at a meeting, or because again, it can be a little bit like, I need this grand solution. No, just get one person who sits at that top table to be interested in what you're doing, back what you're doing. They'll get you then in the right place. And like Virginia said, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the HRD or CPO. It doesn't. It could be it's the FD, or it could be it's the marketing director. It could be anyone. So don't be narrow-minded about that. I think is find out who's at the top table and try and nab one of them to help you out.
And it's funny because when you tend to go to enterprise businesses, their processes have been quite established, or they're so used to working in a certain way. So one thing that I've definitely learned throughout my career is to respect the heritage. Yes, I might be innovative, a little bit of a maverick. And then before you know it, you can go into a whole re-review of how everything's done. And then again, looping back into some senior allies that will help push that dial across the business because they've got the influence.
I think there was some really practical advice from everyone. Sorry, Virginia, you're about to speak. I mean to pick up.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that if there's one piece of advice that I can share in sort of my learnings is normally the person behind the numbers is the person that has the most insight. So when you're trying to identify, yeah, I totally agree. Well, having executive sponsors are great, but when you are part of that, more senior leadership, if you're delivering, they're happy with that, right? That's what they want to know. But who can help you prepare better so that you're not just being reactive but proactive, or you can shape that discussion, is really trying to get yourself in front of that connection with the finance folks as they're planning and as they get insight about what the company needs to deliver, whether they're a startup or whether they're an enterprise. The finance folks can also be really good, and we don't always necessarily have access to them, or they see us, they report numbers to the chief people officer or to the HR VP, and then you get it as a second or third level. If you can try to get yourself connected early on, that has been very helpful for me. And then you can also let if you or your team are going to be in trouble based on what's coming up, right? Are we hiring? Are we not hiring? Are we growing? Are we not growing? So that you can anticipate issues early on.
It's funny because as much as we can plan, sometimes things just happen, and you're like, okay, let's deal with that then.
What I found though is that when you do ask people, the right questions, or you're seen as somebody that wants to help, or how can I be of help, or how can you help me? Everybody tends to be we're all working for the same objective. I've never really gone up to a finance director and been told, hey, you can't have that information because you're, it's confidential or whatever. If you explain why you want to get the information and how you're trying to use these indicators, people are willing to work with you because we're all aiming for the same objective. Right? We want our enterprise to be successful, our leaders to be successful, our teams to be successful. So that's, I think, one of the key elements. And that's a type of skill that can help you when you go on your own. If we go going back to what started this conversation, right, is when you are trying to figure out what are you going to do next. I'm currently building a business, which I didn't ever expect this is what I would be doing at this point in my career. And I'm having fun. I mean, I always had the idea that I would want to do that. It's not easy. I can't say I'm having fun because people just come to me and they're throwing business at us, right? But what I think is fun is understanding how you can help, right? I think what we do at TA, probably we don't get enough recognition for is really solving problems, right? At the end, well, when you're talking about that workforce planning and having to deliver with your teams and so on, somehow we manage, right? We will figure out, we roll up our sleeves, we get stuff done. And working with more than one person, it has helped me identifying different clients at different stages, what they need. It has helped me also shape the way that I want to support and the way my business will lead, right? So whether it is, you go in with the idea that all you're going to do is go to market and specialize, and then you realize well, your clients actually need help with engineering and products. So, okay, well, what do? Force them to go to hire people to go to market if they don't need that? It's about listening and understanding how you can add value. So that's a really cool skill that we own, we have, and sometimes we just don't have the awareness of how we can use it, but it can also help shape the future of where you go next as well.
So that's an interesting journey, Virginia. So from head of talent, director of talent, to setting up your own business. I suppose returning to the roots of what we were discussing, what led you to do that? Why did you take that turn in your career?
I've been very fortunate to work for really cool companies, but I've also been very fortunate to have a different background. A lot of people don't just fall in, don't decide they're going to be in TA. Some people just fall into it. I had a career broader than TA before, and TA is actually what I've only done in the last decade. And I think that after seeing, the different changes and just seeing the data, seeing what was happening and how the market has been impacted, my last job was a very eye-opening experience for me. I came into a great role for talent. It was a fantastic role. The scope was great, but the company was going through a lot of restructuring and, changing their vision, and which they needed to do. It was a transformation moment for the company. And I felt like I came in at a moment where I probably wasn't as needed as I thought, as they thought, right? And you're there wanting to do things, not being able to do things. And I almost felt like this is, the moment in my career where we're lucky to see the transformation that's happening. And I just didn't want to be still, just waiting to see the writing in the wall where eventually maybe my role wasn't going to be needed, because I knew, hey, maybe they're just not right. It's not the right moment to have somebody at my level in this organization. And I decided that I wanted to have control over my future. I was part of a community, we are all members of different communities, right? But I was part of a community where a lot of my colleagues were going through the same issue. They were all very respectable, incredibly smart at and knowledgeable, and big companies and little companies were letting incredible people go, which is kind of dumb to a certain degree, because just a year and a half later or a year, whatever, they're going to try to build, and they would have lost so much money just in trying to build those teams again. But it's not a discussion that people are always willing to entertain. And I just didn't want to compete with. At one point, we were 27 heads of talent in one chat, trying to find a role. And I was like, it's just not going to happen. I don't think that they're going to be the roles like the ones I had at Zalando, where I had 150 people, delivering 15,000 hires over a number of years or whatever. Like, they're less, few and far between roles in that, with which I found interesting. So I decided, and again, being honest, is it's either this or just wait and see if something falls on my lap. And I just can't. I mean, I think many of us are just so used to being active and busy and owning our future and owning what we do in our careers and helping people, that actually being without a job is the most frustrating thing. And it's helped a lot of people pivot. Like, Mr. Fox here, DJ Fox was sharing, luckily he's got other talents that have allowed him to go and do other things while, he decides if he stays or not. I wanted to stay in this space. I think there's a lot for us to be doing. I think there's some amazing things that we can do in this moment of transformation as well, because AI is not going to solve everything. And that's why I decided to go on my own. Long story short,
Well, no, congratulations. And it's a very brave thing to do. I was a director at a recruitment agency, and during COVID made the decision to kind of move on. And I remember what it felt like to start my own business, walking away from, X salary, kind of X setup, and everyone I knew told me I was completely mad doing it. So yeah, congratulations to you. Similar environment, it's very challenging. There's lots of competition out there. So I wish you the best of success with it. Great. So, I mean, it's interesting actually, because I think one of the questions that we had was, is a traditional career in TA kind of possible in 2025? But actually hearing everyone's stories, and I'm sure Paul and Daen, you'll kind of talk about your story and your kind of roots. It kind of feels like maybe there has never been a traditional career in TA. So there's always been these kind of these twists and these turns and these moves, and it's such a fluid industry that's so welcoming to so many different types of people from different industries that most people's career histories are probably quite atypical. Maybe there isn't a standard template. I don't know if that resonates with anyone.
Yeah, I've moved around a little bit and worked for many different teams and different structures, built my own structures. And one job title somewhere will mean something completely different. Or you might start off as an admin or as a sourcer, and you then move on to something else. But the career path will vary from business to business. Or in my case, where I would create my own promotions by leaving X company to go to somewhere else. And then one minute you think you're in talent acquisition, the next minute you're being handed HR and learning development to look after that. And you're like, okay, this is a new bag, but let's go with this. Or you think, do you know what, I want to try something completely different. Like when I was at BT, a lot of my colleagues would get poached for the areas they were recruiting into, like the digital space. They'd go from being a recruiter to a product role. Or when I used to look after procurement, there's potentially an offer there for me to go into the procurement team, but dealing with products as opposed to people isn't my bag. I'm a people person.
Well, obviously, as I spent 10 years agency side, I kind of came in to the in-house world with probably a different view of it. I think when I went in, and I think especially probably around 2020, 2019, I actually think the internal TA space is still really young.
Okay, that's interesting.
Out and out specialist teams, not having TA as part of a job, out and out, every business having it. This is now probably on their second cycle of them. So you have somebody who comes in, sets it up, is there for a while, then there's the second cycle. Maybe they're at their third cycle. If they continue to invest in it, they might be. But in my last couple of roles, I've probably been number 3 in reality. But I've seen the internal TA space when I was first in the agency side was seen as, how do I put this in the right way? It was the place for
you can be honest, yeah.
It was a place for recruiters to go. If recruiters couldn't sell and work in a sales-led environment, they went internal. So and not a bad recruiter, that's probably not the right word. Unsuccessful in an agency setting. An unsuccessful agency recruiter would have got. And look, I like to hire people who've worked in agency because I think the work ethic required in an agency where you're basically running your own little business is invaluable. The actual sourcing part can be taught. I don't think it's a closed skill for me, that is. So yeah, it's gone from that, I think, to then you've had people coming through purely TA routes, where they've started as, like Daen said, an administrator, a sourcer, and then worked their way through. There's some people who have, because like Daen said, people in their teams have gone and worked elsewhere and they're the last one standing. Yeah. So I've found at a senior level in my network, it's surprising the breadth of skill. Like there's some people who are super impressed and have done loads, and there's some people who haven't really done a lot and have found themselves at a senior table, and there's a real gap between that. And I don't think that in the UK market, I don't know, it'll probably be different in the US, has really settled itself out yet. So if you go to a leadership day, you could have somebody on 40 grand or 140 grand. Whereas if you went to a finance leadership day, you'd have a really tight salary bracket of people in the same world.
That's so true.
Whereas I don't think there is that yet. And that's what I think we're still quite immature as an industry within the UK.
It's such an interesting point. And it probably goes back to a lot of what everyone was saying at the start about TA not necessarily having a foot at that C-suite or needing to get a foot in that C-suite, either via allies or just getting onto it to make change happen. If a CFO left, you wouldn't have them promoting a financial accountant into the CFO of a FTSE 100 organization because it would be seen as being a critical kind of risk to the organization. They'd look out, they'd bring someone in at a sufficient level, whilst TA, not that always happens, but it's sometimes seen as a route because then maybe they don't understand the value that someone with that experience in TA can bring coming in as a senior person. And it's that overlooked value really that organizations are missing.
It's like my last 2 roles, half decent leadership roles, have come through headhunters. And immediately, if a business has hired a headhunter to go and get a senior person in any realm, but in our own realm, you know they're serious about it. Mm-hmm. Again, like you say, if the CFO left, you'd use a headhunter. If a chief marketing director left, you'd find a headhunter to do it. It's not a self-promotion or going to a regular HR agency to go get it, in that you know that they want to really drive a new level of person ultimately and get the intellectual capability of people who've been elsewhere and done more stuff and can bring more experience to it.
Yeah, and there's obviously loads of benefits from hiring and promoting from within and keeping people in the business that have high potential and giving them routes up. So, kind of swings and roundabouts, but it's a really interesting observation for sure.
Quite often, there's a gap as well. There's a big gap between your TA lead and then your next one down. I've always been a fan of my last two places I've worked. I've had a number two, like a real number two, somebody who's, there isn't a massive salary gap between me and them and the team. There's a nice little stable element, and they ultimately, well, my last person ended up doing my job when I'd left. So but they were at a level where they'd had the right coaching around them. I'd been there so they could do it, and then the next one down comes up. But yeah, quite often we'll have a, 35, 40 grand recruiter and then a head of who might be on double that. That again, like you say, it wouldn't happen in any other industry, would it? And
you get these huge reporting lines as well. So
yeah,
you won't necessarily
20 people. I've had that before.
That's a nightmare. Yeah. Dane, did you want to contribute?
Yeah, sorry. It's, do you know what, right? In my last role as a Trinity, I had a number two there. Absolutely brilliant. Bouncing ideas off each other as well. There's things that I was really good at. There's things that he was really good at. Like he was like a Power BI expert, really good people manager, really strong. He'd been there for like a good 15, 20 years. And I think all he needed was somebody to come in and just give him that spark to say, do you know what? You can be anything you want to be here. Give him that autonomy. And watching him thrive so much to the point when I left Trinity is now within the ship, and I'm so proud of him.
There you go. You brought future generations up as you've gone
in my own crazy way.
Yeah. But Virginia, did you want to say something?
I was going to say that should be part of your, a good leader should plan on succession, right? And sometimes we're again just too busy doing the day to day, but as a leader, you should always make sure, right, that there's people that can step up and support and eventually be ready to do the job. We ask the business for that, right? We're always asking to be involved in making sure we know who's going to succeed a certain leader. So we should be doing the same when possible.
Yeah, I think that's the hallmark of a mature and, kind of well-rounded TA function that's thinking about legacy, that's thinking about what that next generation is doing. I think sometimes you can find TA functions that are under a lot of pressure and stress in an organization, and maybe you've got a head of or a senior level that don't necessarily want there to be lots of options for replacements, but that's less their issue. It's maybe more the way the business is making them feel as easily replaceable, or the people that are going to take all the blame if hiring doesn't go the way they want it to.
Yeah, you have to back them. That's the key to any part of this, isn't it? And I actually think in my world now, my job's actually probably the least it's ever been about recruitment. It's people development, it's process improvement. I might help with the odd senior piece of recruitment, but actually it's managing processes and developing people. That is the key. And maybe that's why we lose some people when we get to a senior level, and that you can't keep your hands on the tools forever, and you have to go into that more strategic role where perhaps that's why we don't get to the top table. We're too busy trying to recruit somebody because our team can't, and we step in and do it.
That's what allows you to grow as well, right? Otherwise it gets too comfy, I think, and in this era of change, ever evolving change, you got to be ready to do something different.
Step out of your comfort zone. Yeah.
Going back to our initial question, right, when we started the podcast, what's next for TA? And as leaders, we just need to keep our eyes on the game and how it's changing.
What do you think is next for TA? And I suppose the second question that would immediately follow would be, how can you prepare for it?
It's dropping the acquisition. That is the future, because talent is where it's at. So it's going to be an amalgamation of a lot of the roles. So expect to see more TA leaders getting CIPDs. Expect to see TA, HR and L&D merged together to become one wholesome end-to-end talent acquisition journey. That's the future with AI.
I think it's been the future for a while now. I think that the biggest issue that I have seen throughout the last 5 years is the roller coaster is not just for TA. Companies are hiring and firing people all the time, right? It's like, it's a cycle. We obviously feel it because we are directly impacted, but it's happening. I have marketing friends, developers, which we never really even thought that would be an issue. So many people actually open for work. And I have been doing talent, whether you had the title or not. Like, I was doing more things at Zalando that were like posing outside of acquisition. I was thinking of the DEI space, which is maybe not as PC'd at the moment, but it's not going to disappear. So building upskilling programs for my businesses to get more women in tech, doing different things that were super exciting, different, but they were at the end very related to what we should be looking at in terms of a holistic talent strategy. And I think we are in a better place many times, even though sometimes the function reports into an L&D or a talent development person. We might be in a better place because it's so much easier for us to upskill because we've been developing our teams and managing teams and developing ourselves and working with leaders as that we onboard, especially when you do some of the exec piece, than it is for somebody that's just an L&D to learn about the acquisition side of things, about the employer branding, about internal mobility, all the other pieces we have. And I see more and more of my colleagues, and that's also an advice I've shared, is that the more you can take on, even if you don't take the whole thing on, but just take on pieces that are not just acquisition, the better prepared you would be for the future.
I think TA went through this when because I was fairly new out of agency when I saw this pre-COVID, post-COVID, in that AI now is the same as when we went reliance in tech during COVID, in that we go too far. And you do it with anything, don't you? It's like everyone did 5 days at home, and then suddenly now everyone's getting back in front of people. I've always been big on, and even volume space. My team are recruiting 2,000 people a year, but they're face to face with them a lot of the time, and not over Zoom, in person. And I think we're at the same point we went through that with Zoom and video calls where every interview was on it. Even final interviews and offers were made over video call, and then we went back to now getting that face-to-face element. We've then kind of gone backwards again with AI. And I think AI, automation is often said that it's AI, but it's not. It's just automation that we've always had, but it's just given a sexy new name and suddenly it's AI, but it's not. But we've gone probably, for those who've had the budgets, because I know it's expensive, we've probably gone too far and gone, we use AI for loads of stuff. And again, then I think the human element will come back in more, and then it will settle down to actually, these AI products are great, but what value am I getting on them within my process, and how much of the process are you relying on somebody else for? I'd much rather have it under my roof. But yeah, I think that human element will come back more. I think AI will still drive us for the next couple of years, and then it will start to get more back to people meeting people, which ultimately is why our teams do what they do, because they're good at it. That's why they get in the industry, don't they?
Yeah, I agree.
Down that rabbit hole of AI and technology gone, because it's been overdone, hasn't it?
I've sat on panels and that's all anyone wants to ask about. Yeah, but how many times have you met somebody in the last month? Same with your stakeholders. Like, people want great stakeholder relationships, but they haven't had a coffee with them for 2 years. Like, well, you might be struggling if you haven't done that.
See, the best relationships you can make are the ones that you do in person. It's like recruitment, similar to dating. When you date, you meet people for a coffee or for some food, or you go for a walk together. So if I want to secure a candidate, I don't take them on a date as such. I take them for a coffee, take them for some food or whatever, and that's it. Before you know it, they're seeing 4 or 5 of their businesses, and they're on with you.
I think there's a lot of AI fatigue as well. So if people see things they know are automated or from AI, it means less than something that's personalized, like you're saying. So if a candidate is getting real touch points with a TA team, they're actually taking the time to speak to them and engage with them. If stakeholders are actually speaking to a TA team that are there in front of them and trying to solve their problems, they're going to be much more receptive than just trying to solve everything through automation.
I think the one thing this will drive out is something I've always thought would go eventually, but hasn't gone yet, is the CV. I think CVs and cover letter are outdated concepts for me. Especially now, cover letters are pointless because everybody if I was applying for a job, I'd probably stick it through AI to have a look and see if I could make it sound better than what it is. You'd be stupid not to, because everybody's using it. So that advantage is kind of gone. Really, when you're getting a job, it's, well, when we're looking at people for a job, it's can they do the job, basic skill based, then it's personality based, isn't it? It's how well that relationship is with the hiring manager. If I landed any new business tomorrow and they had a cover letter section on their website for jobs, I'd get rid of it immediately, because it's a waste of time. It really is. But the quicker, and also, I feel like if we've got that in, you've got to read them. How much extra time is that taking where you could meet an extra 3 candidates?
Yeah.
If I'm looking through 50 applications, and I've asked for a cover letter, I've probably got to read them. Even if I get through each one in 15 minutes, it's going to take me quite a while. And quite often they'll do it. You'll do them, and it probably won't matter, because they'll have found what they want in the first 20, and then they can't be bothered. I mean, if it was us, we might not be bothered to do it. But yeah, I can see the CV and cover letters pretty much going in the next 3 or 4 years.
I saw a really interesting one recently with a university, with a local university, where there was no CV upload anywhere. Literally, you answered the questions based on what they're looking for, and then when I pressed submit, I was like, I didn't put my CV. So I messaged the hiring manager, and they were like, yeah, we did that on purpose. I'm like, at that level, okay, that's good to see that some companies are trying that.
But then I worry about that. I can answer questions through AI if I want to.
You can.
And that's, I think that is the challenge. The challenge is actually, from an AI point of view, is how we as recruitment team deal with people applying using it. Because,
you know what? When I've done CV-less processes, and I've done these like 10 years ago before they were a thing, where I would bring people into a room at a volume level, and then assess it based on character, team dynamics, all the things we're looking for. And then at the end, I'd cheer the managers, say, who's your favourites? Okay, here's their CVs. And they'd be like, wow, I wouldn't have hired that person. And then they do the job and they excel. But at a senior level, I would love to, in my head, try and design something that would sort of replicate that, but it's tricky. There's a lot more.
It'll be LinkedIn profile, basically. LinkedIn will become, right, if I want to see what somebody's done, I'll just have a quick look there, look at the job titles, and that'll be it. And although LinkedIn is a beast that charges more and more money every year. Sorry, I'm allowed to say.
Do you know
You definitely are allowed to say that, although this will be on LinkedIn, so they might find you.
No, but I think it will really, that's where they are so far ahead now. No one's ever going to catch them either. This is, that could be, the CV could go and LinkedIn could be the CV for everyone.
The only thing I could ever think catching them would be if Meta did a B2B play and decided to create, they did Threads as like a bit of a Twitter competitor. They do, there's better branding and better marketing people than me to come up with a name. They do Meta for business. Then they've got like a ready-made directory of people to actually create, but whether that happens or not, who knows?
That's a whole different topic to go into, but I have some really cool stories, because now I'm hiring without the amount of cheating that happens, and the fake profiles and the fake people. I mean, this is just going to be really interesting. I mean, obviously we've heard of the play of OpenAI wanting to do something to compete with LinkedIn, but more for tech, right? Only for the tech talent. Yeah, I don't know, Paul. I can maybe we'll have a different podcast on that. But going by LinkedIn profiles, the percentage of verified LinkedIn profiles is so small. And even the ones that are verified, you're still, I've had a week where, 6 interviews, 5 were fake profiles, particularly for remote roles. It's insane. And there's actually here in the US, there's an article from CNN that covered people from North Korea getting paid from the government to actually apply for jobs, and the whole the system it's like everything, right? We figure out something and AI can help, and then suddenly AI becomes the bigger problem. So, how do you go after using the means to figure out, and it does have to do with what Paul was saying, like meeting people in person. It's a little bit harder to, but you can't do that when you're applying for volumes. You have to filter people at some point, no? But it'll be an interesting conversation, a great podcast to have, James, on that one.
Yeah, it's funny because we were talking about how every podcast or panel descends into talking about AI, and we are now talking about AI. So it's a great point. And interesting that what we're saying is, if you're looking at the future of TA, certainly a short to medium term struggle is going to be policing AI, managing fake applications like you were talking about, Virginia. We're also seeing the same, certainly in the tech space. There are so many people that are able to falsify their LinkedIn. There's loads of scammers on LinkedIn pretending to be recruiters right now, working at different agencies or in-house and trying to get job seekers' details. So, I think LinkedIn itself needs a big clear up. There needs to be more verification. There needs to be more security. As we become more and more reliant on it for information, the information needs to be more trusted. Cool. So last question then, unless anyone would like to say anything else on that last point.
Well, job descriptions will go as well. That's a whole nother topic.
Okay. So you'd live in a world without CVs or job descriptions?
I think job descriptions are pointless outside of the first 10 lines.
Do you know what? I was talking to a junior on my team.
Benefits area is the one that really gets
key.
How often is death in service the top point, or like in there as a real tangible benefit? I just think I wouldn't dare put a stat in here that isn't verified, but what percentage of people go past job title, first 3 or 4 lines before they apply, even at a senior level? I bet there's not many people who are reading to the bottom of an advert, are there?
That's a really interesting question. I think there's loads of ways to answer that. As you say, it's a really deep question with lots to it. I think there are certain types of individuals that might go through a job spec and really dissect it and actually almost use it as a reason not to apply to a role, but maybe it just depends on their confidence. But I think you're definitely right. The more senior someone becomes, the less likely they are to read it all, because they kind of know what the job is from the title and maybe the first 3 lines.
Yeah, that's probably another wormhole to go.
No
CVs, no job descriptions. Just
no recruiters.
Knock on the door, see if they'll have you.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting feature. I suppose, I was going to ask each of you, because you are, the masterminds of TA and you're here and I've got some of your time. If you could kind of look into the future and manufacture something for you in your career, where would you like to be in 2 years' time right now?
On a beach, is that an answer?
That's a good answer, yeah.
I think probably the key to me is being in an organisation that values what TA does, working for somebody who's great. I think my boss asked me this the other day about something. I just said, look, it's why I enjoyed working there, and was going through various bits at the moment. And it's ultimately about the person I work for. I want to buy into the person I work for, and I want the business to value what we do and give us the headspace to do it. And do I care whether it's a FTSE listed business or a little startup? Not really. It's not an ego play. I've worked for bigger brands, but I've just ended up there. I think, like I say, it's all about being inspired by the people you work for and feeling valued, isn't it? Whether you're a sourcer or the head of TA, it doesn't really matter. They're the important things to me.
I think the change that is happening at the pace that is happening, I'm not quite sure we will be heads of TA in the way that we know the role today. I really do feel that it will be more about that, keeping the human element in very automated processes and understanding, I think we would focus more on the senior and more strategic hiring. I think volume hiring will, be replaced. I mean, you see amazing examples today of already technology being used in that space to accelerate. So I do feel like our role will continue to transform, whether you're internal or external. And if you're an agency today, there's so much that you can do that will be transformed by agentic AI. I'm excited. I want to see where we end up. And I think that, we need to have more and more conversations of this type to challenge ourselves and have conversations like Paul is saying. Do we need job descriptions? Do we need CVs? Okay, so what would that look like? How do we plan for a process like that? I want to be part of that. I want to be part of helping people design those type of processes and see how we still stay relevant. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, figuring out how do we stay relevant. In fact, I'm actually joining another webinar that's already started about 3 minutes ago, precisely on how I can, even for DA, how you use automation to really differentiate yourself, because everybody's sending the same exact AI messages, right? Like, do you use video? Do you use all these other things? So it's an exciting time, James. I don't know the answer to your question, but I just know it's going to look very different from what I'm doing.
It's going to be exciting. Yeah, no, that's cool. That's probably true as well.
And I want to be in the Formula One world of the recruitment industry. I want to be at the forefront of everything that's being done. I want to like look at the aerodynamics and the different components that you can add on to your Formula One car, but in the recruitment space. I want to be a kid in a toy shop, innovation, and share my learnings with the industry. I want to be in a position where I'm actually elevating the standards that we're setting across the board. There is also another big driver as well. I just find it absolutely saddening that only 25-35% of people that are neurodiverse or autistic are in jobs post 30 years old because of burnout.
That's crazy.
It is, and I think we just need to embrace everyone's differences, because we're all weirdos when we're at home. We just need to embrace the differences and use that to our advantage to help everyone. And like, it's fun. Another thing is, I'm a massive fan of geopolitics as well. So with all the mass migration that's coming through, I shouldn't say that's controversial. We've got a lot of opportunity as well to see what other cultures can bring to the workplace. And that's exciting in itself, because if in the Western culture, birth rates are decreasing, and in sub-Saharan cultures, the birth expectancy rates are increasing, there's the future talent pool right there. What can we do? What can we do in that space? So yeah, I want to be at the forefront of everything.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for everyone's time today. It's been an amazing experience. I feel like I've learned a huge amount. My kind of brain's in download mode at the moment. So yeah, thank you.
We should turn the question to you, James. What
Yeah.
We haven't heard a little bit, so at least that last question, what is your view?
What is my view? So where would I like to be in 2 years' time in my career journey? That's cool. So obviously, not another recruitment podcast. It's the biggest podcast in the whole world, and it's bigger than Joe Rogan. You know, that's clearly going to happen. I think in terms of my agency, if you were to take me back 2 or 3 years ago, I'd probably be talking about 100 people. I'd be talking about multiple sites. I'd be talking about kind of crazy growth, headcount. I think if we drill down into what an agency can achieve now with the tools you were talking about, Virginia, I think you can have a really strong specialist agency of, between 15, 20 people working with some amazing customers and providing a huge amount of value. So I think I'd like to achieve that. I'd like to be at the cutting edge of Formula One, like you were saying, Daen, and, kind of using all the great tools to kind of do it. I want to work with the best companies, and I want to work with the best recruiters and kind of make stuff happen, basically. But apart from that, I don't know. Like you said, it's so hard to see 6 months. Yeah, exactly. Is there going to be another big geopolitical turn? Is there going to be an economic slowdown? What's going to happen in the UK election? There's just so much stuff that's up in the air. It's very difficult to make accurate predictions, but if you were going to ask me where I'd like to be, that's where I'd like to be.
We'll be here in this big podcast making history now.
That's it. Well, you're on the first episode as well. You're on the first episode.
2-year reunion. Just see what's happened.
Love it.
Definitely, yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Well, everyone have a great day. Yeah, thank you so much again. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Thank you so much for letting us be on this, your first podcast, the future biggest podcast in the world.
There you go. Yeah, we put the mission statement out today, so we just need to manifest it, don't we? Let's make it happen. All right. See you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Paul. Bye bye.